and welcome to the A2Pcast for the week of October 16th, 2013, the How Many Hertz Are in a Jigawatt edition. This week's topics will be Assassin's Creed 4, the pros and cons of parallel development, and Apple's possible future into the TV market. Let's get right into the first topic, Assassin's Creed 4. It's supposed to be the first open-world Assassin's Creed game. Josh, how do you think that will affect the gameplay?
I think it's a pretty logical next step. Assassin's Creed has kind of always been an open-world game in disguise. So that's one of a small list of exciting things that could lead Assassin's Creed 4 to success.
Is open world for them just the fact that there are no load zones, though? I'm a little worried that they think that's all that it takes to be an open world game.
Yeah. This is my worry as well. Like you've said, or like we've learned in the course of seeing demos and such. The majority of this open world is going to be water. It's just going to be you on a boat going from point A to point B.
Right. I guess it's supposed to be like half of the exploration is naval.
Yeah, and in the other Assassin's Creed games, you went from one city to the other city. Well, it'd be kind of like, okay, instead of going from Venice to Florence, you have to. Like, just loading from Venice to Florence, you have to walk from Venice to Florence. It's like, is that better? I don't know. That's a
really good point.
It's an interesting, thing. You never expected an open world. In the same way that you don't expect open world in a sense of, BioWare games. They're not open world in the sense. You don't really miss it because the
content that does exist is so good.
It's so rich. Yeah, exactly. So, you don't want them to create an open world just because that's what everyone is doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and also ties into why I didn't like Assassin's Creed 3 as much, because you had to walk everywhere. You had to walk through that snow to get from one place to another through the forest, and it was awful because there was nothing to do in the forest.
Yeah,
forests are boring.
Yeah, forests are boring, and water. What's there to do on the water? Sail your boat and that's it. What is there to do in between going from one city to the next? And that's another thing. Like you said, Assassin's Creed 3, even the cities themselves got less interesting, in my opinion anyway.
Well, we could talk about that. I think there's a bunch of stuff wrapped up.
Yeah, but I guess I'm getting too far ahead of myself. But sticking to just the navigation and going from point A to point B, Can they make it compelling in the same way that they didn't make it compelling for forests?
I have a counterpoint. Not that I'm interested in jumping to the defense of Assassin's Creed, because Assassin's Creed has disappointed me as time has gone on. But the thought of having an open world game, quote unquote, that doesn't have load screens reminds me of Wind Waker. And that's all I can think of. And true. I loved Wind Waker, and a lot of people loved Wind Waker, and I think they might know that. And even though there's a lot of water in Wind Waker, and I assume there is some kind of fast travel system in Wind Waker, you have to conduct your way to something, I'm sure.
You only got it, I wouldn't say halfway through the game, you had the ability to create a tsunami that shot you from one end of the map to the next. I doubt that will happen in Assassin's Creed 4.
That seems unlikely. But I really didn't mind. There was something exciting about having your own boat. And they populated it with little things. It wasn't an open world game in terms of Skyrim would have been. But there were still islands to explore. There was still treasure that you could hunt for, strange rock formations that had creatures on them to be defeated. And I would be surprised if they didn't put those kinds of things in Assassin's Creed. Especially if they're going to not have load times, you're going to have this big open body of water and be a pirate. It seems that they would want to put in pirate-like things to do. Are you going to come across other people at random, and can you just steal all their money? That could be fun. That could make the not being able to fast travel somewhere and just moving across the ocean exciting, because anything could happen to you as you're going across the ocean. You could find people to rob. There could be little islands that you could go explore and see if there's caves that you can get a dungeon rating or something.
But I think all of this really highlights the fact that Assassin's Creed is no longer Assassin's Creed. that it's something else entirely.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
And the thing that it has become is something I don't like as much as I liked Assassin's Creed.
Yeah?
I mean, yeah, like, I guess it's different in the sense that, like, I don't know, because I didn't play 3 all that much, so, like, I didn't get a sense of, like, how much the series is changing. Like, I've only played 1 through Revelations, so I've only gotten the traditional Assassin's Creed experience. But how so do you mean, like, it's becoming a different kind of game altogether?
Well, I mean, there's the mini games that have been slowly destroying the series.
that did happen in Revelations. Yeah.
I mean, they've been adding them and adding them and adding them, and Revelations was kind of the breaking point, I thought, as far as mini games, especially with the tower defense. It was just god awful. Thankfully, you only had to do it the one time, and then you could just kill the guy that was the lord of the tower, whatever the fuck that was. But
That was in Brotherhood too, right? Like you had to.
the tower, I think some sort of tower thing was, but the tower defense minigame part.
Yeah, you
I
didn't have to defend the tower in Brotherhood. You did have to defend it in Revelations. Yes.
Yeah, right. But I think this is why Assassin's Creed 2 is my favorite game. I think the story is the most compelling, first of all, but I also think it has a really nice balance of a lot of different things. The assassinations, and it gives you a nice reason for doing all of the assassinations too. It's not just like boring people that you're going around to kill because of reasons.
And it's still, although it got kind of outlandish at times, it's still, your character stayed in the shadows much more than I've noticed, especially in Brotherhood and Revelations. You kind of become like a leader of men, and like you're much more active.
An action hero.
And it didn't really fit the assassin mold, like.
No, especially not if you go back, way back in the past to the original game. The point of the game was actually to run away.
Yeah.
You weren't, it was difficult to fight that many people. You had to run away and hide. You killed someone, and then you ran away on rooftops and hid. That's the essential core gameplay mechanic of Assassin's Creed that I think you're right is gone. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right, and it's not just that it's like hidden or buried. I just feel like it isn't the core mechanic anymore. It is a completely different game than
and even the climbing, the free running, and the climbing has always been so important.
And then in 3, we're in a setting at which, Josh, this is interesting. We discussed this before 3 was even announced. We were sort of just speculating, where does the series go from here? And we thought colonial America could be a really interesting historical setting, but the problem with that is that the architecture doesn't support the core game mechanic. Yeah. And so we thought, well, they just can't do that because it wouldn't work. And they did it, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I felt pretty validated in that. And I also thought, now this is one that most people don't agree with me, but I also concluded that colonial America wasn't far enough removed to really be interesting. Like, it's got a lot of meat there, but I couldn't get into the exotic locale experience of it because it didn't really get to transport me anywhere. Maybe someone who lives somewhere else in the world. I mean, we're here in Philadelphia.
Right.
So I work in Old City. I walk streets every day that are filled with colonial houses. It doesn't really tweak my nipples in a good way to get me excited for, like, Renaissance Florence. Oh my God. Maybe people in Italy feel like 3 was the best part of the series because it was such an interesting setting. But now, Mike Hogue, sitting over here in the corner, has only ever played Assassin's Creed 3, and he loves it.
I do.
That's interesting. Let's put you on the spot.
It does. It does. That does put me right on the spot. I was really
Welcome to the spotlight.
Much about it. No, I think that what you said about living in Old City, you're a very special case.
This is true.
We're talking about a fraction of a percent there. Yeah. Of somebody who has that experience, or somebody who lives in colonial Boston.
There are people in Boston in my same predicament.
Yeah, so we're talking maybe people from California, that's one of the largest populated states in the U.S., I'm sure they have no idea what colonial houses look like. And whenever they travel to Philadelphia, they are blown away by it. So I'm sure they probably looked at this game as probably being somewhat interesting as from a colonial standpoint. I thought it was rather interesting from a colonial standpoint, but then again, I'm very interested in that time period. I think it's an interesting time period.
Right. Well, and I don't disagree that it's an interesting time period. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff that was going on. Although I would also say that there's a lot of interesting stuff that was happening in Europe at the same time too. That when you're focusing on colonial America, that is kind of.
Didn't we determine that the French Revolution would have been the ideal place?
Yes, I think we did actually. The French Revolution would have been more interesting because it gives you more history and culture. That's the main problem with doing it in colonial America, is that, one, there was nothing to climb because they didn't have any buildings, and everything was brand new, and more than everything being brand new, everything was boring. It was just wooden.
Three stories of wooden buildings.
They even said, they admitted that they had to go against historical record and make the buildings slightly more colorful with pale blue and white, because otherwise it was just too dull to look at.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, there is nothing in colonial America especially at that point, that had any real value. I mean, we're not looking at these big landmarks in Europe. We had the tallest landmark, even at that time, would have been Independence Hall. I mean, nothing was
which you don't even get to climb.
Yeah, so there's nothing really in America at that point to give you like that oh my god moment in a game.
And Assassin's Creed was always so good at oh my god moments, which when you get a chance, you should take my 2 off the shelf and just revel in climbing the Duomo.
Well, that's one of the things I think we all talk about is the, especially in Grand Theft Auto 5, when you look at the skyline of what I mean is
there's an impressiveness simply by the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we have a game. Assassin's Creed where there really isn't anything special.
Right. I mean, everything just kind of looks like a mud pit.
Right. And I think that they understood that. They admitted that they understood that, and that's why they tried to give us the wilderness.
Right. The wilderness
was supposed to
offset it,
make up for that. But I don't believe that it did.
My big problem with the wilderness free running was that it was all done along predetermined paths. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't just actually jump from tree to tree to tree in any formation. It was a sort of cleverly hidden single path you would sort of jump on at one point, and you couldn't get off until it was like a highway. You got on and you had an exit, and that was your exit, and you had to take it. There was no other place to go. So you didn't feel good free running over this because you just felt like it was doing it on its own.
Right. And the combat from the trees I actually really liked. And when they let me go through the tutorial and I was able to hide above the soldiers in the tree limbs, and then I could, hang one of them and jump down and stab the other one. That was a badass moment. And the only time it actually happened in the game was when the tutorial gave it to me. I would wait in trees for hours for people to pass by with nothing.
It's true, but you could hunt.
I could set traps for rabbits.
If I understand it correctly, could you wrist knife a rabbit from the branches?
Yes. I did air assassinations with, the hidden blade in the rabbit's throat, or deer, you can do it to deer. I mean, you can do that in the game, and it's just absurd. I should not be able to air assassinate a bunny.
And that's my little point here is as Josh said, I didn't play the other Assassin games, and I think that's the game has its perks, or else I wouldn't think it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it standalone. You guys have had experiences with the others, which obviously in comparison, it's not as strong, but I think personally, I thought it was a good game. I'm not going to run to it every day of my life.
Let's jump to the topic of annual releases, because Assassin's Creed has become an annually released game for several years now, and it appears that it's going to continue to be. Does that hurt the game? Because it's not the same team, so they don't actually have 9-month development cycles.
Mm-hmm.
They are still 2-3 year development cycles with rotating teams, but just the fact that that, well, if I don't play that one, another one's coming in a year, it's no biggie. I feel like that does something to the
definitely
narrative.
cheapens the entire experience, and I think if you were going to do statistics on it, you can find support for that, because I don't think there's a single game in existence that comes out every year that has a reputation for being a good game.
Innovative.
An innovative game.
Well, I think, good is difficult to say.
And at least not as good as the game that came the year before it, and it hurts its public image by quite a bit. Can you name a single franchise that has a good public and critical standing?
Oh, sure. Critically, no, and I think narratively, no. I think you have to take into account how many people, even if we don't like Call of Duty, but how many people come back for Call of Duty, mostly for the multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 99% for the multiplayer. Yeah. Because they don't actually care about the single-player story, they care about what new multiplayer features have been
This is
added.
interesting, because, like, people don't go to Assassin's Creed for the multiplayer, they
go for the single-player experience.
And it's like you said, it's something that's churned out, like, just every year, and it's like...
So it's alarming that people are still going back for the narrative.
Yeah.
When the narrative
it's just
is
kind of
falling.
It's really lost its way. 3 was supposed to be the big conclusion to this glorious time-bending science fiction saga.
Yeah, I mean, it had me. I was all on
And then
board.
it was colonial America, and you got to play as Desmond for like...
We got to fuck around
30
in the
minutes
cave for a while.
You had that god-awful let's climb a skyscraper section halfway through the middle in what was the most aggravating, look, it's New York. And they've never been to New York. They're the only people in the world who've never seen New York City. They tried to sell me this building, this skyline that you could see a 360-degree view of as New York, with not a single New York landmark and mountains. I was baffled. Maybe I wasn't as angry as I was downright confused, but...
This is very interesting. I listened to you guys on this, and all I could think of was how some movie trilogies can really do it, and some, after the first one, or after the second one, or the third one, it just is total trash. And some, it's all about the narrative, and some people still go to see, like, The Hangover 3, not because of anything, but because of the...
I suppose people
hey, there's a
like
new Assassin's
the
Creed
same
game.
thing.
I'm gonna buy that. Yeah, well, I mean, brand recognition is a very powerful motivator, and sequelitis is a very powerful motivator for companies that, it is like risky to put out something new and to put out something familiar. It's just
it's going to make
especially in these economic times.
Yeah, it's going to make you money.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's like you said, people like us, I just lost interest in the series after 2. I mean, when Brotherhood and Revelations, it took me, I don't know how long after they were released that I actually played them. I've kind of enjoyed them, but I couldn't see actually paying $60 for Assassin's Creed Revelations.
It wasn't a game that was worth $60. And I think I never got to finish that point of the narrative in 3, just... The promises... It was just a strange game that they set something up that they didn't pay off. Throughout all of the games that came before, there was this promise that there was this war coming in modern day. And I don't know who in the world wasn't gearing up for that modern day assassin. Where was that game? I mean, the point of the game is to explore history, but there was getting really good in the modern thing. When the very first time in 2, when you're really allowed to take Desmond and go at it as a modern assassin, beating people up.
It's so much fun.
It was really exciting.
I thought that was a taste of things to come. I mean,
everyone thought that was a taste
everyone
of
with a
things to
brain
come.
thought that was the case.
Yeah.
And I don't see, like, I think the colonial period could have worked if they made that maybe a third of the game and had the majority of the game spent in the modern storyline.
Yeah.
And you could have actually then said, well, the historical portion of this is still there, and we understand that maybe the gameplay mechanic doesn't shine through as well as it has in previous titles, but that's okay because we have you climbing skyscrapers in this one, and you actually climb a skyscraper in a New York that actually looks
and like
good.
You could use really cool like techie gadgets as a modern assassin, and my God, there's so many fun things you can do.
There's so much potential for that.
Remote detonated mines and heat-seeking grappling hooks. I mean, Jesus.
And I think they had at least been really good at making classic to modern parallels in how the free running would work, and even in terms of the weapons you would use. I feel like that could have translated into a really good modern Assassin's Creed game, and I guess we're still just going to keep waiting for it.
Yeah. Will there be an Assassin's Creed set in the modern day?
Eventually they're going to run out of time period, so they're going to have to give it a shot, right?
Because that would be pretty cool.
But the problem is, though, that we had characters that we had invested in for
this is also
for several games, and they squandered all of that for a dumb ending. And now Desmond isn't in Black Flag.
Yeah, Desmond is gone and done with, giving us we might suspect that Damon Lindelof was consulted for the story in 3. It took that kind of turn. Everything was good. It was interesting. It made sense. It was just completely enveloping. It drew you in. What I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it made sense, but
I wouldn't say it always made sense, but it was always compelling.
It was engrossing. Yeah,
in the way it was in the way it was told, it was very.
And then all the modern day stuff in 3, it kind of went, hey, no, you're done.
No, everything sucks and I'm dying.
Everything sucks and I'm dying.
That leads us into topic number 2, which is parallel development. Assassin's Creed 4 is one of the titles coming this fall that is being developed for current gen and next gen. You have a bunch of other stuff. You have Call of Duty. You have all the sports titles, Battlefield, Watch Dogs, etc., etc. All of these titles are coming for current and next gen. But the experience of what is a next-gen title on a current-gen system can be somewhat alarming, right?
Oh, yes. It's true this cycle, and it was true last cycle, and we can start with the things that we do know. From the Xbox to the Xbox 360, there were all those crossover games, and having it on an Xbox was just a god-awful experience in every respect. The 2 ones that come to mind that I remember was Hitman Blood Money, the wonderful cult classic, which sometimes
is Hitman a cult classic?
Oh yeah,
cult though.
I mean,
Hitman's pretty mainstream.
It's pretty mainstream, but Blood Money. I'm not crazy. Blood Money is definitely counted as a little niche kind of
hipster Hitman.
Hipster Hitman kind of.
Continue.
Blood Money is that kind of game. It didn't sell millions of copies, but it's got a huge little fan base. And it came out for both, and the one that really stands out to me is that there's a glorious mission in New Orleans where Mardi Gras is going on, and you dress like a chicken, and you drop pianos on people's heads, and there's the entire bustle of Mardi Gras happening around you. And on the 360, it's really interesting because you actually have to preferably dressed as a chicken, tail this businessman walking through crowded streets with people constantly getting in your way. And when you played it on the original Xbox, it was like 4 people on the street, and the draw distance wasn't really up to par with it letting you see all the buildings around you, and it was a sad experience. It was a really sad experience. And Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, the first one, when it came out on Xbox, was a first-person shooter. It wasn't even the same game. It was just that one was just a pure money play, so it doesn't really fit into our argument as well there, but it poses a different related problem of why they make these games, and it like with yearly development releases, kind of artistic compromises.
Yeah, right. So you're not releasing a product because you believe it's the best possible product. You're releasing it because it's going to make more money.
Yes, and
it's kind of just easy to turn the knobs down a little bit and say, oh yeah, that works on the 360 now.
But no, and that's our big games. We got a list of our big games that are happening. We've got Assassin's Creed 4 was our segue point, is a big, very popular game to come out, especially because there will still be games after the new system's release that'll come out. But this tiny little core of games that people will buy and then have to upgrade. Battlefield 4, Assassin's Creed 4, Watch Dogs,
Watch Doge.
The
Call of Duty, new Call of Duty, NBA 2K, Madden, I mean, yeah, all of those, they're going to have the really interesting experience of seeing them very close together on one hardware and then compare that to another and sort of see what they're,
see what they're like. Now, just recently, we watched the
Watch Dogs.
The Watch Dogs on a
Xbox
360 with that Aisha Tyler trailer.
Yeah.
Oh.
What happened?
I mean, the game honestly looks worse than Assassin's Creed 3. Like, it looks worse than Assassin's Creed 2. Maybe it looks about on par with Assassin's Creed 2. The character models in Assassin's Creed 2.
It looks to me like GTA 4.
It does have like GTA 4
because
yeah.
I don't know. It looks like that. I wouldn't say worse, but I mean, GTA 4, really old game, and that's what it looks like. It's very disconcerting.
All those decals of...
Now, they have come out, and Ubisoft was quick to do a PR cleanup and say, no, that's not what it's really like. But you have to wonder. If I buy this game...
on current gen,
what's it going to look like?
It's going to feel current gen, and I think it wouldn't be as bad if we hadn't seen all of these trailers full of magical next gen recordings of the gameplay. Or, like what Battlefield always does to us, is
show us the ultimate PC version.
The tease of the supercomputer running Battlefield 4 at, just totally specced out. And then we play it on the 360 and we go, that's nice.
Yeah, this is for people
but I can't see the pores on that man's face.
Who have played the Battlefield 4 beta that just came out. And I haven't played it too much because apparently none of my friends are interested in playing it. But what really strikes me about it is that it's so sparse. Battlefield 4 has invested so much into creating a rich environment using these next-gen capabilities. There's like dust particles and there's destruction and that entire skyscraper needs to come crashing down, and you play it on the beta on the 360 and it's just... It doesn't even feel like Battlefield. Like Battlefield 3 works really well because it was designed to be on a PC, but when they put it on the 360, they made it for the 360. They tailored it for that current gen experience. This one is an afterthought, and it just kind of looks like a house that people are packing up to move out of. There's nothing going on. There's no one here for business, and you're just kind of running around in a 60 frames per second kind of dull shooter.
Oh, sure, because, I mean, you have to have that skyscraper falling, but if the processor's worried about that skyscraper falling, it can't worry about all the beautiful dust particles that you're going to have on a next-gen console, or all the wonderful post-process effects, or all the lighting effects, or all of that other stuff.
And in some respects, I'd say Battlefield 4 on the 360 looks worse than Battlefield 3.
Just because of the sort of overall look
of the game. Like the guns in particular. The gun is most certainly a lesser quality, especially because they really want to push that 60 frames per second. And you can't make that game 60 frames per second on a 360 without sacrificing something. And so it suffers in both of those respects. One, it doesn't have the cohesive post-processing experience that you'll get on an Xbox One. And two, just to get that frame rate, they've actually pulled down the quality of everything.
Right.
So what are they... Really, I mean, they're not really at risk of losing that much credibility, I think, because Battlefield is still rolling higher than most in terms of the product that you're going to get. But the 360 version might make a lot of money, but it's not going to make anyone very happy.
Right. Does the 60 frames per second do something, though?
It's nice for a first-person shooter, and as we're getting closer to using it with all games, I notice it now when I'm playing other games that aren't 60 frames per second. When you're really doing a lot of quick things, it can get annoying when the motion blur of things that aren't quite crisp get in your way. You want to be able to rip yourself around as quickly as possible and assess the situation at a fraction of a second. And if you don't have the frame rate to actually see things as quickly as you can turn, that's a problem.
What was it Rage that was?
Rage was 60 frames a second.
And you said you played that.
And still looked beautiful. I played some of it. I did not finish Rage.
But from what you played,
which is an interesting thing we can talk about with Doom 4. But
yeah, but from what you played, you could see the usefulness of 60 frames.
60 frames per second it's just smooth. It's so smooth and wonderful, and I think should obviously be the future of gaming. That's where everything should and will inevitably be. But right, like Josh is saying, 60 frames per second is nice, but if you have to sacrifice the quality of, if you're sacrificing texture resolution, if you're sacrificing polygon counts, and post-process effects and like particle effects and things like that we've become used to on current gen. I mean, that's kind of, those little things are really what has made the current generation, that's been the bulk of the improvement, is basically what I'm getting at. And now toning that down at the very end, just for the sake of a higher frame rate, is going to be very alarming, I think.
Especially when you're, like you said, we're used to these incremental advances in these things that we've...
Right, and now they've sort of switched around the entire weighting of what is important visually.
Well, they have gone on record and said these current-gen consoles will be supported for, 2 or 3 years. So we're going to be in this murky territory for, another 2 to 3 years.
It's an unfortunate time.
It is an interesting time. It's more interesting if you have $1,000 to drop on next gen hardware in the near future.
Yeah,
of course. But I think it brings me back to a point that I was mentioning, I think, with you, Josh, is that you will have development on current gen consoles for another 2 or 3 years, and much of that will be parallel development. But at a certain point, there will come a time when it becomes so much more difficult to make those improvements on current gen, as opposed to how easy it will be to make them on next gen, that it won't be worth it to studios. It will be not worth their time to make those improvements anymore. And that's when they will stop.
And that brings up the other point of how much does parallel development actually hold back graphical improvements from people focusing exclusively on the next-gen hardware. Now, no one can really be working on a next-gen game without constantly thinking about how is this going to affect a parallel release. Whereas once we finally get past that, as we saw with the last system,
right, then we can really go.
We can actually see. I mean, let's take a look at the first Gears of War to Halo 4.
Oh God!
Whoa!
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto 4 to Grand Theft Auto 5. Not that Grand Theft Auto 4 was released,
but just
in the beginning of that cycle,
of the life cycle, right?
I think the parallel development can play into that. Stuttering.
Certainly.
How do we figure out this hardware? Well, it's a lot harder to figure out the hardware if you're not
focused
actually
on
dedicating your time to figuring out the hardware.
But it's sort of a catch-22 because, I mean, just me personally, I'm not going to buy a next-gen console for who knows how long. So, if companies just went full steam ahead with next-gen and just said, well, forget about the 360, which BioWare, by the way, is doing, that they're not releasing Dragon Age for current-gen. It's just, I think it's a next-gen exclusive as far as I know. Which is, good because, from what we've seen from Dragon Age, it looks like a next-gen game. But this leaves me in a predicament. I'm like, come next year, I'm not going to be able to play Dragon Age, even if I really want to.
Well, but see, I think if all of the developers took that point of view, we wouldn't even... there wouldn't be a question of, well, are you going to get the new system? Because you have to get the new... Do you want to play video games? Well, okay, I guess you're buying a new system this year, aren't you? It then doesn't become a question. It becomes, you have to do this. And in a way, like not supporting, not supporting backwards compatibility on systems, I think, as unfortunate as it might be for our wallets, it would be useful. It would be much more useful if they just said, no, we're done.
Yeah, we're done with that.
Just by halfway point of next year, no more 360 games.
Yeah.
No more new 360 games. Anyway.
It'd be better for technology, even if it wasn't so helpful for people financially.
Yeah.
These are the trade-offs of life. But that reminds me of another company that we can bring ourselves into our third topic with, in how you transition between things. Apple has always in their keynotes talks very, very proudly about how good they are at keeping all of their customers up to date. Everyone has the newest phones and the newest software. And I think they do this because they're not so great at letting you do whatever you want. Android lets you do so much more because it's not a single.
It's not a controlled experience.
It's not a controlled system. So you can have as old of a phone as you want. You can use as old of an operating system as you want. And, you have that range of quality among Android phones for that very reason. And so our third topic is
Apple's possible foray into the TV market. There have been some rumors going around for quite some time about, will Apple make a TV? What would it be like? They have their Apple TV product, which is, of course, not a TV, but a little box that streams your iTunes content, or mirrors, rather, your iTunes content, can do Netflix streaming, I believe, Hulu,
it's got a
things
lot of
like
channels.
that.
An ESPN channel, there's HBO Go.
Yeah.
So, right, it has apps, because I imagine it essentially runs on a form of iOS or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of can stream all the stuff that your iPhone and your Mac can do. And it's an interesting product.
Puts iOS games on your television.
Puts iOS games on your television.
But how do you? I'm sorry, I don't have Apple TV, or I don't never really look into Apple TV too much. How do you? This is off topic, but how do you actually play your Apple games through Apple TV?
I think you still play it
through the iPhone.
through the phone.
Oh, okay.
It mirrors the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all about mirroring.
Okay, so the device itself is
The controller.
the controller.
Yes.
Okay.
Though they do have third-party game controllers now, which that in conjunction with an Apple TV becomes an Ouya for iOS games. But this is kind of spurred on by yesterday. In fact, we just bought a new TV, and we were just looking into consumer reviews, trying to figure out what's the best bang for your buck, and just really amazed by how awful and confusing the current TV market is. And I mean, the names of products, there are no product lines. They just have long strings of characters as a model number, and that's what you have to just write it on your hand and show it to the associate at the store you're going to, and just say, I would like one of these, please. I don't know what it is. Just give it to me. Here's $600. It's an awful way of doing things. The menu systems, the smart TV functionality on TVs looks terrible, doesn't function well. It's all over the place. There's no cohesion. And personally, I believe that Apple would make a product so far superior, because that's what Apple does. That's what they did with the iPod. That's what they did with the iPhone. MP3 players before the iPod were garbage.
It is honest. I can understand
and
now.
Smartphones, touch screens.
Why the rumors are so fueled? Because this environment is exactly the environment that smartphones and MP3 players were before Apple brought their own products onto the field.
But I don't think it's weird though, because the TV world is a little bit more developed than the smartphone world was.
It's certainly more established. That's
and that's where when I thought about Apple, I think is not too late to this game, but we're so far into TVs that I'm trying to figure out, will their price points work in this TV world when you can get, I mean, these smart TVs are only $600. I mean, they're not great, but even iPhones were competitively priced when they came out. They were very limited. I'm trying to think, because I've heard about the idea of a TV, the iTV, but the price point seems really high.
Yeah, there's no way Apple's going to make a TV for $600. That's not even remotely possible.
But I think they will, if they choose to pursue this course of action, I think that they could very well manage a product that is of a high enough quality that is not a shocking price point. Because, we're talking about stuff that it's not uncommon for someone to spend over $1,000 on a TV right now.
That's true. There are bargain TVs, but the top of the line TVs that they show you, are the TVs.
Right.
They are
TVs of the
between
future
$1,200 and $1,500.
Well, I mean, TVs of the future are in the thousands.
Also, yes.
I mean, if you want like a big 3D TV, or if you're looking for something that's 4K, or things like that. I mean, you're going to pay several $1,000s for it. So it's not, I think, a ridiculous thing to assume an Apple TV would be $1,000 to $1,500 for a regular, say, 42 to 60-inch range TV, a big standard living room kind of TV, but of Apple quality, which can sync to all of your devices. And I mean, let's just sort. I mean, can you think of things that it would make sense for Apple to do that could work with your TV? I mean, all of the beautiful possibilities there.
Yeah, as we said, like there are things that TVs can do now that would be easier to do if they were just all controlled by iOS. Because, I mean, any kind of Apple TV you could have to assume would have a beautiful display. It would be a beautiful set piece itself, designed by Johnny Ive. It would run a form of iOS, and it would have a DVR within it, either of a flash, probably some kind of high-quality flash drive. They would certainly make partnerships with all the major cable providers, and you could say, oh my god, I forgot my thing. My show's on tonight, I'm going downtown. Wait, let me pull out my iPhone, DVR. And it would just do it. Now, like Mike said earlier, in the room full of mics, he says, like Mike Rifenbury, the editor of Alive to Play, said to me earlier, this does exist, but when you try to do this now, you could pull out your Android phone to try to tell your Comcast TV box to talk to your DVR to record the show off of your Samsung television. Now compare that 5-step process with, I told my iPhone to make my Apple TV record something.
Right. They work
Boom,
on
boom.
They work on the same network. They use iCloud, like all of your other Apple stuff uses iCloud. It works not only with your laptop, with your iPhone, with now your TV, with your desktop, with all of the stuff that you already consume media on. And I think that just bringing the TV into that sort of cohesive media experience could really be great. And even I don't see a reason why it couldn't use a form of, like predictive DVR. I mean, if you're not watching the TV at a time that you typically watch the TV, it can check what is on. Is it that thing that you typically watch? Well, let me record that for you in case you're actually missing it by accident. You can't get to the DVR to record it, or you're busy, or your phone is off. Or you're dead in a ditch. I mean, who knows what you're doing on a Saturday night. But
because it records.
I mean, even if I were dead in a ditch, I would hope my DVR would get Project Runway ready for me.
Right. I mean, it's got to happen. And just the idea that it would just kind of assume and do that. And I mean, if it has 2 or 3 terabytes of storage, I mean, what does that matter? And if you don't end up watching it, it just erases it on its own. Doesn't bother you
anything
with
more than a
unnecessary
little notification on your pull down screen on your iPhone.
Yeah, just say, hey, I recorded that for you. I don't want that. Go away. And that you don't want it. That's it. It's erased, whatever. Oh, thank you. I'll watch that later. And you can manage all of these things through any of your devices. It's beautiful.
Well, interestingly enough, I think of this has to be the age of these big cable companies kind of going to the wayside. This is all kind of in that because we have a cable box that hooks into our TV. So we have our cable comes from this box, not from our TV. Why isn't it that our TVs aren't on internet at this point where we can just automatically stream and the smart TVs that are out seem to be boggled down with just hand motions and dumb things that have nothing to do with your viewing experience, just in order to sell you a TV,
right? Or make it more difficult, or try to sell you features that are nonsense.
Yeah, just puffing up the product. When Apple has always been, this is what you want. We know what you want. This is what you want. This is what you need. And here it is. And we all just go, and cry because it's just the best thing that's been out. And that's what it really needs to happen, because I can't stand the 8 products that have to talk to each other in
Yeah.
our TV watching
And that
experience.
search, and you're right, you brought up the bloated features. They're just out of control. Each company has their own versions of them. So you walk into, you're either on Amazon.com, you try to walk into a Best Buy or an electronics section at your local Walmart, and you stand there in front of this wall, and you've got 35 televisions in front of you, and they're all almost the same product. Some of the company's brands you've never heard of before. Some of them you understand. But we were looking at the ones yesterday, and you can get a 32-inch TV, and it can either be 720p or it could be 1080p. It could have 3D or it could not have 3D. And
It could be
Samsung
a
makes
smart
5
TV.
different versions of the same thing. And the only way you could know them apart is by looking at the last 4 numbers on the model ID. Now, how is this a terrible idea at all that Apple comes in and says, look, it's the Apple iTV. There's one for 50 inches and there's one for 42 inches.
That's it.
It has an apple on it, and it's called the Apple iTV.
Oddly enough, I feel like the TV world is still stuck in like the 1930s salesman route, where they give you like 900 models that are like so close to being the same, and then you need to walk into a store where there's some cheesy guy who works on commission who's going to try to get you.
I'm gonna get
That
the
is
deal.
that is
Get your
literally
happy
it.
meal.
When everything
Now-
else, the
Now
technology.
this TV right here, let me tell you about this TV.
That's a good TV, but the one we have over here, it's like, but everything else in our technology world, it runs on this idea of an informed consumer. But the TV world, it's like
It's overload. Even for
Yeah.
people who are tech savvy, it's overload to try to understand all of these different things. And there's just so much nonsense and shit.
well, like the 3D TV stuff, like that's so dumb. It's not worth. You're gonna pay $300 more for the off chance that you're gonna wear glasses and watch a movie that.
Who the fuck
You-
is going to
you-
put
you
on
wanna-
3D glasses on their own couch? Who the fuck? That's the only sentence I can summon. For
I mean,
that.
these are the kind of people who are dumb enough to pay hundreds of dollars more for a TV that has 3D capability.
I just
This way we
don't
have
know.
it.
Right. At least
This
when
way we
in the
have
future
it.
everything's in
At least I
3D.
have it.
No.
It's interesting. I mean, when Apple came out with their newest form of display, it was with Retina, and they explained the Retina, and you read the content, and you were an informed consumer, and you knew that the Retina display was the best display. And then you walk into a TV store, and you're boggled down with plasma, LCD, and LED, and it's just
And
we know what
OLED
that is, and we know what that is. But why are there so many?
and curved OLED.
Right, and they're trying to sell you things on this is the resolution versus the refresh rate. Like, you're right. Apple's handling of the Retina is still it makes more sense
it's
than all the
magnificent.
other phones that try and tell you what the tech specs are. And you know what? Like we've said, tech bloggers care, and no one else does. The entire marketing campaign of the Retina display, you can't see pixels if you hold it at a normal viewing angle. That's
it.
all you need to know.
Right.
That's literally the end of the sentence.
I don't know the pixel density on the Retina display. But guess what? That doesn't actually matter. My experience using the Retina display is what matters. What do I feel when I look at it? Do I care that I need to know how many pixels are on this? No, I don't give a shit.
What is the refresh rate on an iPhone? I have no idea, and I don't give a shit.
Well, I think this really pushes us into a whole nother idea of, at one point when technology, all these things are coming out and not everybody has it, and Apple came in and said, reason why people didn't have it was it's so confusing to use. And Apple came in and said, no, wait, it's not confusing. And Steve Jobs said technology is best when you don't know you're using it. So now everybody has an iPhone. Everybody has technology. So we're not...
And it's not necessarily that they know all of the parts that make it work.
Exactly.
You
And
can
so,
if you want to,
exactly.
but it's not required.
Provide the information, but give us an understanding, a very, not condensed, not dumbed down, but just the condensed version. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. If you can't explain something simply...
But I think this gets to the whole heart of the issue, is that all of these, like, bloated, inflated, awful tech nonsense babble shit is, like, it's all fake marketing.
Literally designed to confuse.
Right, designed to be able to have a salesman talk over you and sell you, upsell,
who
like...
clearly doesn't know any more than you do.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
who doesn't know shit.
He's a guy at Walmart who gets paid minimum wage and says, let me tell you what I think about
No,
LCD.
this is really the best. You gotta be the expert.
Yeah.
And then they try to sell you a $100 HDMI cable because it's got the Monster logo on it.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
When
It
they
truly
say,
is.
this has the gold tip on the HDMI. That makes it go faster.
I think
Did
everybody
you know
wants
that?
the gold tip, though.
I think
Yeah.
everyone wants to.
Before we wrap this up, I do want to mention the one thing that we haven't mentioned yet. That's a specific instance of something that Apple should really seize on here too. That Mike Rifenbury, the editor of A2Play,
Are you
mentioned earlier.
Really? Is that a thing now?
That's a thing now.
Okay, good. Great.
Why do we still feel compelled to fiddle with the video settings on our TVs on a near daily basis based on the program we're watching?
Oh, right. Color profiles.
Profiles.
On TVs and displays
Why
in
does the
general.
consumer have to touch that?
That seems like something
That's a whole other category. I feel like that's a fourth topic now.
No, I mean I don't want to open up a topic. It's just a nice little example of that's something that Apple's screens already just don't even. Even when you are trying to calibrate your display to try and get a different color, they never go about it in a way other than let me show you what this is. When you have to go through your gamma, they show you the pictures. They show you They only give you like 3 options. Which white point would you like? Warm, cool, and that's the most advanced. But here, how me, a simple musician, learn computer. I don't need to know the specific examples of exactly how warm my screen needs to be. Why is there vivid and cinematic and eco and game? It should just look good. It should just look good. You should turn it on and it should look good.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing again, where I feel like the TV world is stuck back in. Now I feel like this is like the 1980s, where Dad
has to fiddle with the cable box.
Dad had just bought the new TV on the
Banging
block,
the top.
and he had his
bunny ears.
antenna. Yeah,
Right.
and he's sitting down. He's the man of the house and needs to fiddle with the TV because nothing looks right on one of those old TVs. But now we're in the age of incredible technology where.
But you're still doing
But we're
that.
still fiddling with why is it even there? Why do we have that option? Except that it's like an outdated feature.
Right. It's not hard to make something look right. It's not. And I think if you were to, there is definitely a common denominator. If you get people who have taste, if you take a room full of 100 people who have taste and give them a default TV and say, make a good setting that'll work with all the things you watch, you're gonna find some within varying decimal points of. That was the end of my sentence. You're all looking at me to keep going.
Well,
It's all going to be the same.
You left an
Common
ellipses on the end of that sentence, Josh.
There wasn't an ellipsis.
It was only
there.
because I had an improper breath at the beginning.
If I could just say one thing, this might be thinking a little bit too big. Think about when Apple came out with the iPod, specifically iTunes, how much that changed not just the MP3 industry, but the music industry as a whole. Think about if they came in, simplified the TV, could that simplify...
And just made Comcast their bitch?
Yeah. And
I mean...
Comcast is ripe to be made a bitch.
But not just that, but like just think of like the TV landscape. Like we're clearly moving towards an era of
Netflix and Hulu are
like
certainly more
piecemeal
important.
binge watching stuff. Like that's what iTunes gave you in terms of like, I want this song but not the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what Netflix is all about. Like Apple, I think would only do this if the market itself, if they could themselves,
If they could know they could dominate all forms of visual media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the era of the big cable company is really coming.
Yeah,
to
the
a
big,
close.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's in music terms. That was the Columbia Records. That's the that's those big record companies that are really outdated.
that have been around forever, but they have, they're so giant. Everyone says, well, of course they're going to be around forever. Well, maybe not, because someone comes along with a better idea and simplifies it and gives us just what we want.
We want to be in control.
Could that happen with the cable market? I certainly hope so.
I mean, no one thought it could happen with the music industry.
Yeah. I mean,
Yet here we are.
Here we are.
And the music industry has been made a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Can they do it with cable companies?
Now, here's the only problem that we can say for this is that Steve
Jobs
is
isn't
now
here
dead.
to do it.
Although I will say, as I said earlier last night, Steve Jobs was so powerful, He literally just sold us a product that doesn't exist. We just sold ourselves a product that he didn't invent.
Or
What the fuck?
Or did he instill in us the understanding of how we should have technology?
He has given us a taste of what good design is capable of being
yeah,
as far as technology is concerned.
and his philosophy. I mean, we've all
It's pervasive
learned
through
yeah,
the product.
and of all the technology companies, how many of them have a Steve Jobs personality that we all want to know what he's thinking and how he came up with that product?
Right. I mean,
Nobody's-
you can be a
Mike,
technological innovator.
Steve Ballmer. The CEO
Oh,
of
never
Microsoft.
mind. He's all about developers.
Developers.
Developers. We could go on about that.
But I think in general, in my mind, to cap it off, technology has really brought everything together. Cable was one thing, your phone was another thing. Everything was fractioned off, and your personal assistant was in the office. Now we have all of these things really coming together, and as it starts to come together, it almost just feels like it always should have been that way. And Apple, I think, is going to fill that gap.
Here's hoping. All right, so that'll do it for this week. I didn't do introductions this week. I forgot about that, so apologies. Of course, we had Mike Hogue, our guest, back with us again.
Guest extraordinaire.
Guest extraordinaire.
Occasional liar.
Occasional liar, yes.
Hobnob
extraordinaire. Mike Schupsky, of course, and Josh Hartman, our writers. I'm Mike Rifenbury, the editor of Live
to Play.
Yes. Which I am not going to change saying that, because that's a thing. And y'all can go fuck yourselves.
EP2A. Editor of Live to Play. EP2A.
You know what? I'm going to sign my emails with that now. Thank you, Mike Hogue.
Yep.
Alrighty. So, of course, if you like the A2Pcast, you can turn that like into a YouTube like. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. Yeah. Laugh it up, Fuzzball. You can...
What's happening? This podcast is imploding.
You were going so well.
You can like us on Facebook at
You can like us on Facebook.
/Alive to Play.
We are also on Twitter, @AliveToPlay. You can tweet us there. Hopefully the website, it is under construction. We're doing things. It's coming, I promise, sometime soon. And we're writing things for it too.
It will not be a blank website.
Empty, blank,
Guaranteed.
Play logo.
Guaranteed there will be some words on a page for you to read.
Excellent.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.